we are both working in the same company, and this will be the case of that company. We will introduce ourselves a little bit later. Just quick organizational points. We will have time for Q&A in the end, so if you have some questions, just write them down for yourself, and we'll get back to them in the end. Yeah, so the topic of our talk is how much adaptivity is enough, based on our experience at PandaDoc. And there will be 3 key parts of this talk we will go through. So first of all, though PandaDoc case has been presented at several previous LAS conferences, we understand that not everyone might be familiar with the company, so we'll give a brief overview of the company and its journey. Then we'll go through a series of blueprints of organizational design at PandaDoc, taken at different stages of our transition to our current stage. And yeah, then we will get back to the original question, how much adaptivity is enough, and what does it actually mean, how did we measure it, and what are the, let's say, ideas we came up with in the end.
Mm-hmm. And hope to have some questions also. So something about us. On this slide, we decided to collect some things that we have in common. So we're both based in Krakow, a very beautiful city in Poland. We both are LAS practitioners, and you, Denis, is a candidate for a LAS trainer, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And we both work at PandaDoc for more than 2.5 years, and that means that we are happy to see the consequences of the decisions that were taken back there. And some of the decisions were our decisions, so that's even more interesting. And before we jump to the meat of our talk, we'll have a very brief and very simple warm-up question. It's not meant to be complicated, that's why no tricks there. So you'll see the question on the slide, and you can just voice your answer or show it on your fingers. So how many LAS frameworks are there? So what do you know about this? So I see some answers.
I see 3.
Is it 3?
Any
Okay.
other ideas?
Yeah. Okay, 3. Yeah. Okay. So we got some variants. Maybe you have something, also the answer inside your head. You want to keep it for yourself only. So for the current moment, we don't know about the future. And for this universe, I don't know about the parallel worlds or something. There are 2 LAS frameworks. This is LAS and LAS Huge. And why it's important to keep in mind while we were talking and guiding you through the org design evolution is because we started with LAS, and then we switched on to the LAS Huge, and we got several versions of LAS Huge, which you will also see on the slides.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And moving on to get some context before the journey.
Yeah, so quick intro about the company and its journey. As you might have understood already, the company is called PandaDoc, and doc stands there for the documents, not for the doctor. This is a confusion that we sometimes stumble into. The company started in 2011 with a different name of QuoteRoller, mainly aimed at sales teams and simplifying their work with creating documents, sending documents to their potential customers, and signing documents. And then pivoted to becoming a PandaDoc in 2013. So now we are a leading document workflow automation software, and we are also providing different services related to electronic signature and other things you can do with the document. And we have more than 52,000 active customers around the world. So our customers are businesses, so we're a B2B company. And they are spread around approximately 130 countries. We initially started offering our product only for with English interface and with for primarily English-speaking markets, but now we are introducing more and more localizations. So people like the last were Romanian language,
Bulgarian,
Czech. Finnish, Czech. So we are actively expanding into Europe. And yeah, in 2021, during the Series C round, we officially became a unicorn, meaning that our evaluation has been around $1 billion. Yeah, this is just a memorable photo for us from the Times Square of PandaDoc being congratulated by the American NASDAQ trade. Yeah, we have around 800 employees around the world. So we are a remote first company, but it was not like that all the time. Why it happens, so we'll discuss later. Of these 800 people, about 350 are working in the product and engineering, so we call it R&D department. And yeah, we have right now around about 50 teams, or is it a right number? 50?
Yes,
50 exactly. 50. Yeah, we have 50 teams sharp, the majority of them being feature teams. And yeah, with that quick intro, we can probably talk about the org design evolution of PandaDoc. So when Panda was less huge, not from capital L and capital H, the company was majority of company was located in the city of Minsk in Belarus, and we had around, I think, 80, 90 engineers back then who were working in co-located teams in the single office. And at some point, the company leadership decided that something is not, something is preventing us from growing further, getting more successful as a business, and they started looking for opportunities on how to change the way the company works. And that's when they reached out to our colleague, Evgeny Labunsky, who helped them to organize the last flip, which happens in late 2019. Once again, everyone was still collocated. They started with kicking off 8 teams through self-design workshop. And back then, the CTO and co-founder of the company was appointed as a product owner for this whole LESS implementation, which is still true 4 years later. He is still our CTO, co-founder, and product owner, but now for the whole LESS Huge.
Which is great, I think.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later as well. Yeah, another concept we'll refer to in our conversation will be the business lifecycle model, because we consider it very, very important for us to navigate our journey. At the same time, we keep in mind that all models are wrong, but some are useful. So we don't pretend the business lifecycle model or any other model to be like objective truth or universal truth, but it helps us to more or less navigate where we are right now in our company's journey and where we're going on. If I would have to describe the business lifecycle model in few words, so this is basically a model which, as usual, have 2 axes. The horizontal axis is time, the vertical axis is revenue, and according to like how quickly you can grow your revenue as a company with time, because your product over time like reaches some ceiling. There are 4 steps which are typically named as part of this model, like the introduction, the growth, the maturity, and the decline.
So, starting with the early growth stage, where you will see the first blueprint of how everything was organized in our R&D. And as for the time frame, it will be late 2020 and early 2021. So, the challenge that we had at this stage is that we started to grow. And if you remember, we started with 8 feature teams, and then there were 9, 10, 11, 12 feature teams all working within a single backlog. And we started to understand that it is a way too much context for our product owner. And it's a cognitive load for our teams also. So we decided, okay, now it's the right time to try less huge and to move to requirement areas. So you will see this type of slides throughout our presentations. These are the driving ideas that will represent each stage of our org design. And for early growth, we organized requirement areas around ideal customer profiles. So that was our idea, how to better organize. And for example, we had a new requirement area, API and integrations, basically concentrating on the part of the backlog which is dedicated to serving the needs of the customers who are using our product via API and integrations. Because of the requirement areas, the new role was introduced, the area product owner, and they started to work together as a product group. One of the interesting, and I would say an idea with a long-term impact is the third one, that teams were named as a minimal feasible org building block. We made it to simplify things. We just didn't want to have this, to come up with new teams every time we launch some initiative or we launch different requirement areas or we change something. So we want just to simply,
Yeah, and also because we just wanted to have stable, long-living teams which learn together and become more efficient in the way they collaborate.
Yeah, so we wanted this to also provide the high-performing teams the stability, and in the long run, even today, people say, like product development developers in teams, they say that it's a motivation factor for them to stay with a long-lived, high-performing team, and it's like an island of stability in the ocean of complexity, and they're really happy with that. And the fourth idea is about the leadership roles within the area. I will mention this a little bit later also, but the idea behind that was that once a new requirement area has merged, a set of roles is assigned to this area, and people just stay within one area, like one person, one area, so you work only within one area. So this is the actual screenshot from our online collaboration board. When we prepared this flip to less huge, we were already in remote, because you remember early 2020, precious COVID came. And this was pretty simple. We've just described the idea behind each requirement area. We just provided teams with information who will be from leadership teams in which area, and we gave them the opportunity to mark their first and second choice. And after several rounds of discussions, we got the picture where the teams who choose to be in this or that area. In terms of the structure and how it looked like. So this is our first blueprint. So it's early 2021. And you see here the big bubbles representing the requirement areas and smaller bubbles representing teams. As you can see, majority of teams are feature teams, but some of them marked in blue color are component teams. As you can see, they formed the separated requirement area, which we called platform, and that was the first iteration of a platform requirement area for us. You will see how it will change and what would happen to it later. And these people inside the big bubbles, they are representing the leadership team. I will leave this screenshot on the next slide, just with some facts and numbers to a couple. So as for the mid-2021, we had 18 teams organized in 5 requirement areas, 4 product requirement areas and 1 platform. And in terms of growth, because this is an early growth stage, if you remember, we grew from 12 to 18 teams, which was like 150% growth. And it was already quite a growth for us, but wait, what is coming next? And as for the leadership roles that I've mentioned, apart from the area product owner, we have product managers assisting the area product owner. We have director of engineering and engineering managers inside, the head of design, and scrum masters who are working within the area.
Yeah, that was exactly a complication that we introduced back then. At that point, we started saying that we are more like less inspired company than company actually doing less, because definitely introducing so many layers of complexity in terms of management for requirement areas and overkill from the last standpoint. We had some positive things resulting from that. We had some downsides resulting from that, and this will be reflected further. So yeah, the next stage was when we actually entered the hypergrowth stage. And this is, as it was for PandaDoc, starting from mid-2021 to late 2022, so year and a half. Just keep this time frame in mind, like only year and a half. What happened over this year and a half? First of all, PandaDoc has officially become a unicorn company during the Series C round, which enabled us to provide funds for this hypergrowth. And yeah, this was coming as a result of several things. First of all, definitely our product being an outstanding product, and if you are a company, I definitely suggest you to try us if you're working with documents a lot. But also the shift to the remote work in the pandemic world has lifted many documents, many products which were serving the needs of the remote customers, and signing documents remotely is definitely one of the things many people had to face during the pandemic. So our driving ideas at the hypergrowth stage were, the first one is that the product owner, still being our CTO and co-founder, operating on the level of so-called investments. I'll describe later what it is. Then the next one is that we started testing the idea of incubation, basically the part of the company where new hypotheses being validated, not new hypotheses from the new features standpoint, but new potential revenue streams. Basically, we can almost say that these are new products, but they are just using the infrastructure and architecture of the PandaDoc, but aimed at absolutely different customers. Another thing which was not that conscious back at that point, but we followed down that slippery slope as we were growing, we started copy-pasting our organizational design. So basically, kickstarting new requirement areas every now and then when there were sufficient new teams hired. And this played some negative experience, it brought some negative experience to us. But what was especially important at that stage was employee safety and hiring for cultural fit. First, employee safety. So as you remember, in 2018, the whole PandaDoc was co-located in the same office in Minsk, in Belarus. The first situation that changed that was the revolution in Belarus, which happened in August 2020. After that, many pandas have faced political persecution and had to flee from the country. And
for example.
Yeah, and company did a lot to support them in terms of finding new home for themselves, like setting up the way they can keep working with the company. And that was our history starting from late 2020. By 2022, our R&D looked like that, and so there are two important things to mention. First of all, that we've opened 3 new offices in Lisbon, Portugal, Warsaw, Poland, and Kiev, Ukraine. And we also started hiring some people remotely, calling them digital nomads. So these red arrows here are approximate location of some of our employees we had hired as digital nomads. And the company had to switch to remote first mode. One thing you probably can already understand living in 2023 is that having many of our people moved to Ukraine and having many new people hired in Ukraine affected us when the full-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine started. So we once again had to support a lot of people in their relocation, people who became refugees fleeing from their hometown, or even maybe people who didn't leave Ukraine but still got displaced within the country. And company was also doing a lot to support them. So this is, I think, the reason why many of us can, by heart, say that PandaDoc is an awesome place to be at. One positive thing that happened due to this hypergrowth and opening new offices is that we had many new wonderful pandas around the globe. So opening new offices in Europe, also opening additional offices in the US, where we have the majority of our sales team and marketing teams based, helps us to have much more new people. How many exactly? So talking about R&D, in this year and a half, we grew from 18 teams to 48 teams. So almost tripled. And these were all teams that were added by hiring, not by like hiring some outsourcing company, but by hiring people from the market. This is why cultural fit comes in play. We structured the hiring process in a way to make sure that people who join us have the DNA which works with the Panda DNA. And we had several stages of interview focused not only on their technical skills, but also on their cultural skills, like where their soft skills, their product mindset, their experience with developing a product in a highly competitive market, so on and so forth. Another thing which we also did was the so-called onboarding sprint. So when people were joining us, we were trying to make sure that they're coming in cohorts at the same date. And when they were starting, so the first 2 weeks were expected to be their onboarding, and that was organized as a sprint. So they were joining us on the first day of the official sprint of PandaDoc. And for these 2 weeks, they were working together, depending on the number of people in one cross-functional team or several cross-functional teams. They were onboarding at the same time, addressing some product backlog items from our real backlog. So through these 2 weeks, they didn't only read documents about how it works at PandaDoc, how our infrastructure is organized, but they also had to live it through, because at the sprint review in the end of this sprint, they were expected to showcase something that they've delivered in this sprint. And that, by the way, was very important talking about cultural fit, because we had at least, I think, 3 cases, I think even more than 3 cases, when after these 2 weeks, people were reaching out to their engineering manager saying that, I think PandaDoc is not the right place for me.
Right.
Yeah, and we, in fact, were happy about that, because this was showing that quite quickly that this is not the right match, both for the candidate and for us. And for us, in a long-term perspective, this is good. So by the late 2022, thanks to the 1 billion evaluation investment round, we grew our R&D 4 times compared to early 2021, from 12 teams to 18, and from 18 to 48 in less than 2 years. This is definitely a high load on the system, not only on the system we develop, but also on the organization as a system. Also, opening new offices in other locations and hiring local people introduced the complexity of multicultural environment to our company, because until then, the majority of our R&D folks were from Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, and they were speaking predominantly similar languages. They were able to understand each other without switching to English, and they were also having not that tightly coupled, but still quite similar cultural backgrounds. That changed with opening new offices. Yeah, and remote first came to our life, multicultural environment came to our life, and we ended 2022 with 8 requirement areas of 48 teams in total. As you can see, the platform requirement area with these blue bubbles still existed, and they were still working as component teams. Teams like QA automation team, DevOps team, developer experience team, security operations team, etc. And we had few other requirement areas introduced. They have kind of different borders around them. Some of them have blurred borders, some of them have strong borders. What does it mean is that requirement areas which had strong borders were more or less isolated. There was no that much movement of teams between these areas. The ones that have blurred areas, they were more flexible in these terms. And this is exactly what we mean when we say that product owner was operating on the investment level. Every requirement area still had its mission and part of the business they were working on. And whenever a product owner was deciding that we need to prioritize that investment area over this one, we were moving teams around to reflect these investments people-wise.
Yeah, move next to their maturation stage, and here you will see the 3rd blueprint. As for the time, it is referred to late 2022 and early 2023 until the recent changes that we'll mention further. And the challenge that we started to notice back then is that we noticed the rigidity of the system that we've built with these requirement areas, and some of them not able to move teams out of there quite easily. So I remember one quote for the from the VP of product. She told okay, I have a great new opportunity, so which requirement area will take it and examine and make a prototype? And we had requirement areas, product owners thinking okay, this is not corresponding to our mission, this is actually not aligned with our roadmap, okay, this we need to consider. And she was saying I'm feeling in a kid's game when I have a shape of a cube and I have to put it in the hole of a particular shape, so I go to the star-shaped hole and it doesn't fit, so I come to the sphere hole and it doesn't fit, and so what should I do with this great opportunity? So that was an interesting point, and it was also the point when we started to ask ourselves this question, okay, so seems that we've provided quite a lot of focus for requirement areas and for teams who are working there. But what's about our adaptivity? Are we adaptive enough to reach our business goals? And what is good enough? What is not good enough? That were the times when we returned to this question. In terms of the driving ideas on this stage, the first one is that I've already mentioned. It's the less specialization and more value. We really wanted for the system to be more flexible and not have these situations when you really have to reconsider the area mission to put something new into their backlog. And one more challenge that we had there is, if you remember the leadership set of roles in the area, it was also some kind of a rule that I don't know why we followed, but we did it, is that a team moving to another requirement area together with the engineering manager of the team. And if engineering manager has 3 teams, you can imagine this puzzle will never be correct. So we wanted to cut this. We saw that it is not helping us. So why are we doing this? Like, let's stop.
Yeah, and I think it's also important here that it was kind of counterintuitive, because on the one hand we were saying that the primary mission of the engineering managers is to be people managers for the developers, so they were not like Java engineering manager or Python Java engineering manager. They were just responsible for a certain amount of people split across several teams, and they were not responsible for technical implementation, for like, I don't know, technical roadmap or coming up with estimates. They were not responsible for any kind of this stuff. So we were pushing for highlighting that this tightly coupling of engineering managers allocation and teams allocation is a completely counterintuitive thing.
Yeah, right. One of the also interesting ideas that we got back then is that probably different areas may have different optimization goals. Like, why not? Until they don't contradict each other, maybe each requirement area could concentrate on something that it wants to optimize as a primary focus, and other optimization goals not contradicting each other, just supporting each other. And we will mention this a little bit later, what we've done with that. And by all this, we wanted to address the accumulated systems fatigue with this rigidity, some kind of unflexiveness and silos between the requirement areas. So let's see what we've got. I know you're curious. So here on this picture, you see bigger areas. And by the way, that's something which resonates with the talk of the Alex and the Yogos. They wanted bigger areas. And we discussed that, wow, so less huge companies like thinking in one direction. So after some time with smaller areas, we are moving to bigger ones. So as you can see here, only 3 requirement areas, but some of them have sub-areas still. Yet the whole idea is that it's very easy to rebalance investment within these sub-areas. So it meant to be a very dotted line. So the teams, if we want to move the teams from one sub-area to another, they don't have any impediments, any blockers, and it should be very simple to do. And one more thing here to notice, you remember our platform, Blue Bubbles? So now they've joined other future teams to form one requirement area, which we called the app platform area. And this was the first time when component teams work so closely with the feature teams within one requirement area with one area product owner. And it's a quite interesting experiment to see what's happening there. In terms of some facts in numbers, so I'll mention that our previous 8 requirement areas merged into 3, and some of consisting of sub-areas. The platform joined the requirement area. And for the optimizational goals. So for the biggest requirement area, which we call the customer value track with 2 sub-areas, the optimization goal was still adaptivity, because it's still important for us to be able to change direction quickly and at a low cost. At the same time, for the app platform requirement area, the optimization goal was to optimize in transaction cost through lead time, for example. And it doesn't contradict adaptivity, yet they focus more on this. For growth, for example, the ideation and being able to examine as many hypotheses as possible in a short time was more important. And for this setup, we think that it will serve us longer than previous ones. First, because the further growth is not planned, and second, because we already see the benefits of it. This is all for the blueprints, and This was in early 2023. And now let us return to this existential question.
Yeah. So as Lena already mentioned, when we were introducing these requirement areas, we started considering different optimizational goals the area may pursue and like how this may affect their structure. And for biggest area consisting of 24 teams in total, it was decided that the optimizational goal is adaptivity still, as it was for the whole company before. And okay, for us being already for a long time in the game by that moment, when people reached out to us and told this, our first question was, okay, and how much adaptivity is enough? So what do you mean when you say adaptivity? So we decided that this requirement area where both of us work, so Lena is responsible for one sub area within this requirement area, I'm responsible for another one. In total, it's 22 teams. And we decided that this is a perfect sandbox to try to approach this question not from a false dichotomy standpoint that we are either adaptive or not adaptive, but start measuring that and start answering that question and identifying are we adaptive enough already, or we want to be more adaptive, or we want to be less adaptive, because all of this definitely creates additional fatigue and pressure within the system. So when we talk about adaptivity, we refer to classical description, which at least Bas and Craig both provided their less classes, that like highly adaptive system is the one which has lowest transaction costs and lowest switching costs. With the transaction costs, as we already said, we had the new requirement area of application platform, which was whose mission is to actually lower the transaction cost for the whole company. So their primary goal is to, by improving our infrastructure, by improving our, for example, outdated components, by cutting our costs on infrastructure to reduce the transaction cost to minimum as much as possible. And that of course affects other requirements as well, but they typically go through so-called change initiatives, which we try to align with our engineering strategy. So usually we have an engineering strategy for a year, and based on that strategy, every quarter we come up with either updated or new list of change initiatives, like quality, like I don't know, revisiting our test automation pyramid, or increasing observability of our system to improve the performance of our system.
Yeah, and as for switching costs, that was an kind of unknown beast for us, because we started to ask ourselves the question, like, okay, have we ever measured this, like our ability to quickly change direction? And are we good enough in that? And what is good enough here? And what if we are not good enough? What if we want more? Like, what should we do? And in terms of a low switching cost, I also remember one quote from our CTO and the product owner. He was saying that, okay, with this new structure, I want to, and especially within this requirement area, I want to be able to invest in something that I believe will have, or I see will have the biggest value, and not invest in something that we started doing yesterday, and just because we started doing this, we need to continue. So he really wanted this low switching cost. And one more reason why we've chosen this area as a sandbox is that at the beginning, and the late 2022, basically 20th of December, I remember, like we decided to make a big flip in the end of December. We were discussing how these areas start, and in one sub-areas in core we had 14 teams starting, and it was bigger than the number of teams we had for our first last huge flip. We had 11 or 12 teams back then, and now 14. And we were thinking like, okay, there is a concern that probably people will naturally start to pick only familiar items from this backlog, and they will create this artificial or like natural specialization within the teams. And in some time we will have a situation when the percentage of the product backlog items that team knows declines, and because of this teams will lose the opportunity to change direction easily and will become less adaptive at a global scale. So we had this concern, so we really wanted to look inside deeper and to understand, like, will this concern become a problem or it will be fine.
Yeah, and so talking about the switching cost, how did we measure it? as far as I'm aware, there is no single right way to do this, so we had to come up with our own. We did the following. So we were measuring switching cost not on the individual backlog items level, but more on the level of initiatives. This is not epics. This is more like some big bets we make within our product, which typically cannot be delivered within single sprint. And yeah, so definitely some team that starts working on a specific initiative is invested there for quite some time. And of course, that naturally leads to a narrowed down focus and like, let's say, implicit specialization going up. Not from technical standpoint, but from business standpoint. And we decided to take cases when the teams are asked to switch from one initiative to another and measure how long does it take for them to be efficient with the new initiative. So basically, from the moment when they see the items from that new initiative for the first time during the PBR, till the first commit that goes to production related to this new initiative. And for each team which was going through such a journey, we were creating such documents in Google Docs. Maybe we should have done it PandaDoc. And we were like writing down all the context. We were writing down all these milestones with specific dates. So what happened when the decision to switch the team was made, when the first PBR happened, when the first item from the initiative has been taken to the sprint backlog, and till the first commit and till the first sprint goal achieved. These were like things we were measuring, and for us, point A and point B was first PBR, first commit. So we were measuring this timeline. And yeah, so what's your best guess about our results? What was the average time it was taken teams from the moment they see the new initiative for the first time until they were able to release their first commit to production? Any guesses? Any numbers?
3 months. Okay.
Okay. Anyone else?
Okay.
Okay, so from 3 months to next sprint. Any other ideas? Okay, we already have quite a big extreme. So in our case, we understood that this is in averages to 14.75 working days, which is unfortunately not the first sprint, but usually the next sprint. But keep in mind that, of course, aiming to be predictable and also aiming to be flexible, we didn't expect teams to start working on it as soon as they saw it at the PBR. Of course, when the PBR happens, there is usually still the ongoing sprint to finish, and this was the trigger point when we were starting calculation. We typically have so we live in 2-week sprints. All the whole company starts sprints on Monday and finishes them on Friday in 2 weeks. And every Wednesday we have PBRs. So you can say that from if the initiative has been taken a look at during the first PBR of the sprint, 7 of these 14 days were happening in the previous sprint where the team was not expected to work on it. And yeah, so that means that we can expect the first commit to happen in the second sprint from now on. And like, okay, we have a number, but it still doesn't answer the question, okay, are we adaptive enough? Are we not adaptive enough? And unfortunately, we had to be quite subjective with that. We had to reach out to our product owner, who is a CTO and co-founder as well. So this is quite some power concentrated and responsibility at the same time, concentrated in one hand. And when we presented them with this number, they told us they're totally fine with it. So this is good enough for our product owner, and we don't need to like slow down or speed up. And yeah, anything you want to add here, Elena?
Yeah, and it was important that it was also his request for adaptivity to be his optimization goal for the requirement area. And if he says that for now it's good enough, then that's our starting point, and quite a good one. But what if we want to move further from this starting point, or at least to keep up? So what are the things that we should do or should continue doing to stay with this good enough level of adaptivity? And we'll share with you the 3 points that we find very helpful. And first things first, the priority first principle. This might sound very basic, yet do you remember the concern of deteriorating adaptivity? so that the teams will start to pick up only familiar things from the backlog and they will lose this opportunity. So we started to look at our system dynamics and to understand, okay, which variables or which feedback loops are working in this part of the system. And we saw that why this concern has not become a problem is because at a minimum, once a quarter, product owner reviews the investment via investment thesis. This is minimum, absolute minimum. So mostly it's happening every month, or even it could happen every sprint, but at minimum once a quarter. And every product owners, after the decision of the product owner, they review the investment within the requirement area each sprint, of course, through the prioritization of the product backlog. And there is a rule, or there is like something like it could be called a discipline. Once the investment is paused or stopped, as a team, you take something from the top of the backlog. There is no way you do something else. There is no way you continue with what you were doing before. And because of this rule, the number of domains team might work within a year grows, and then team keeps in shape to change the direction. And even some teams, they have some kind of checklists, like what should we consider if we move from one initiative to another. They just go to make these ticks. And one mental model that supports us here, and this is let's say conscious mental model, is that it's okay for the team to take some time for learning. It's more important to do something of a higher value, even if we'll make this not that fast, if we need time for learning, than to do something that no one needs, but just we can do this tomorrow or today. So this is helping us a lot, and teams get used to this. So it could be great to see that at the top of the backlog is something which they've already worked with maybe half a year ago, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll take this again, we'll like this. But if it's not the case, the teams will just investigate the options and say, okay, let's try this one, it looks interesting.
Yeah, and another thing that significantly helps us here is that it wasn't that positive at the beginning, but it brought to good results. At one point, one of our area product owners had to leave us, and we are still not successful with hiring the replacement. And for over the last 6 months, our product owner also has to serve as an interim area product owner for one of our areas. And that's, let's say, one very long go-see Gemba work they are doing, which helps them to better understand how things actually work on the low level, how our PBRs work, how our sprint plannings work, how sometimes even how teams collaborating on the same initiative have a multi-team product backlog refinement in the same room. That gave them a lot of higher level of transparency, and they want to replicate some of the things they saw and we changed now in other requirement areas as well. Another thing that helped us is the so-called Team North Star model. This is our own internal naming for the team self-assessment we've developed, focusing on important aspects of product development and collaboration, and at the same time providing some set of behavioral patterns we want ideal team at PandaDoc to have. So when it comes to working with the roadmap, when it comes to working with the product owner, when it comes to working with stakeholders, when it comes to learning within the team, when it comes to applying engineering practices. It's in total 19 domains which we cover in this self-assessment, and every 6 months at least, or sometimes even more often, the team goes through this self-assessment, which helps them to first identify their current state, second, compare the current state with the previous state, and third, identify some actionable experiments they want to take to improve themselves towards the perfection we have. And it's focused specifically on stating that at PandaDoc, the ideal feature team we want to have is the team that has a whole product focus, which reinforces multi-learning, and which actively collaborates with the product side and also introduces engineering practices.
And the last one from these three that we suggest today is the component mentors. And this is also something that helps us to be adaptive. Why? Because imagine you're a team who is taking something from top of the backlog, and you never worked probably in this domain, and you have no idea how this might work. And there are component mentors who, before you even took this initiative, provided some rules and guidelines of how to better contribute. They provided probably some trainings, so online self-paced things, and because of this, you can onboard to the initiative faster. So cut the switching cost. The second point is that they could provide the consultation. So if you want, you can contact anyone like very easily. It's not official. It's just more informal than formal. And if needed, they could support you with reviewing your tax solution. And for some services, even the code review is mandatory from the component mentors, but only for few critical ones. So this helps us to share experience and help people to learn.
Yeah. So, how much adaptivity is enough? This was our initial question, and I'm not sure you're gonna like the answer, but the answer is it depends. It depends, but it depends on a set of things which we consider important. So first of all, like when talking about the adaptivity, is it enough or not? It's important to understand like where you are right now and whether it helps you or stops you from achieving your company goals and enabling better return on investment and things that you do. Second thing we still believe is the stage where you are in the product life cycle or business life cycle model for a reason. So remember me mentioning the incubation requirement area we used to have in the past, which was kickstarting new ideas. As you saw, we didn't have such requirement area in the beginning of this year when we merged into 3 big requirement areas, but now it starts to gradually get back, because kind of having a team or a set of teams assigned to something that is not a high priority from the whole product perspective, but at the same time might be our opportunity to uncover new revenue streams, is a little bit counterintuitive. And therefore, we need to have a specific focus dedicated there. Typically, at least according to Roman Pichler, this red line represents the effort of investment into discovery, which happens over time as your product becomes more and more mature. So in the beginning, when you are only trying to uncover whether you can deliver something that people will be ready to pay for, when you are trying to get early investments, when you try to quickly validate ideas and quickly check your assumptions with the market, you may spend more time into discovery. Over time, when you have products, when you have paying customers, if you have direct communication with them, getting that feedback becomes easier. You can do it more frequent. Therefore, the effort in discovery reduces. But at the same time, we don't want to approach this point where our growth in terms of revenue stalls or even goes down. We want to prolongate the life cycle of our company. And this is why we want to achieve the so-called life cycle extension. And that means that we need to start investing into discovery again. And our incubation area is exactly what's doing that. This is not the idea we came up with on our own. It's the idea from book Zones to Win by the same author as Crossing the Chasm, very popular book in management world. And it basically says that the way you organize your company, especially if your company working in the innovations field, should be organizing into 4 areas. So performance zone and productivity zone, the ones you can see on the right, are the 2 which are focusing on your current revenue streams, on making money for you right now. Those that are on the left, they are transformation zone and incubation zone. They are supposed to come up with disruptive innovations that would enable new revenue streams for you. And in his idea, he says that transformation zone focuses on something that can become a new revenue stream in 2 to 3 years from now, incubations in 3 to 5 years from now. But we have now it's in the same place. So the purpose of the incubation area in our case is to uncover new revenue streams. Therefore, they operate in a VC-like style. So we already had a successful case with that. 2 years ago, we've acquired another company which was developing a software for online notarization of documents. We took their expertise, we took their folks, but we created the new product completely from scratch, operating in the incubation, and it was a quite successful case. So now this is a new strong revenue stream for our company. The product offering is available in 47 states in the US, and we have like multiple hundreds monthly active users, multiple thousands notorizations going through this product every month. Would this happen if it would go through our common backlog? Most likely not, because compared to features that are expected by the existing customers, that would probably never get to the top of the product backlog. Therefore, we had first one, then two teams working on that separately with their own product backlog, with their own product owner, in a more like single team Scrum, or later like two team less. And this is the success case we are trying to replicate with some new things we are doing there. So basically, currently we have, I think, 4 incubations going on, and each incubation is developed in a single Scrum team with a separate backlog and with a separate product owner. And once again, the product owner of the company just makes a decision, okay, so what's the percentage of our R&D we are ready to invest into incubations? Yeah, and therefore, in our blueprint as of September 28th, 2023, we started to get this bubble here, still within this bigger requirements area, but it's a little bit separated, and it has its own operating model. And the idea is that this bigger requirement area might serve as a donor for that incubation area whenever product owner decides that we want to work on something. But it works only in one direction. You can pull teams from the wider requirement area to incubation, but even if there is nothing to do in the incubation in the current sprint, you're not the incubation teams are not expected to take something from the area product backlog. They're investing into like discovery, investing into like market analysis, attending customer interviews, etc., etc. So we want them to be 100% focused on what's going on in their incubation.
Yeah, starting to wrap up today's driving ideas, just to understand like what's going on now. Our product owner still operates on the level of investment. It has not changed since the flip to less huge. And what is supporting us, the adaptivity now, is that teams move in following the investment. So it started to be much more simpler to move one team to another because of rebalancing investment. And that is because our structure is separated from people, and it became more flexible. And the fourth one, we decided to let it be here. It's just something that we're currently also working on and thinking of improvements, is that our key area for lead time improvement is not delivery, but discovery. And we are running several experiments in terms of this. So probably some of the topics of our future discussions. And some lessons learned and call to actions. So the first one, also could be very obvious, but still, org design is just a means of a business to achieve its goals, and it's okay to change it if you see that it's not helping. Of course, keeping all the principles that you would like to make live, but still, in terms of the details, it's better to change. The second one is that this initial question about adaptivity could sound very existential. Like you could have no dashboard that you open and see, okay, today our adaptivity is 5, for example, whatever it means. So it needs more deep investigation, and that's why this brings a lot of insightful conversations and a lot of takeaways out of this. And the last one, my favorite, is that adaptivity is not a false dichotomy. It's not black and white. It's a continuum. And you can search for millions of options between these endpoints and find your good enough and find your desired level of adaptivity.
Yeah, so what's coming next for PandaDoc? First of all, more and more of our processes are being improved based on data, and we want to keep doing that. Second of all, as I said, now, thanks to incubations, and not only to incubations, we are moving more and more into the direction of introducing the multi-app experience to our customers, meaning that they can do many things with different use cases. They can get many jobs done with our product using the same platform, but different apps with coherent user experience. Yeah, and definitely even more experiments, because experiments is what has been driving us forward all these 4 years, and it's definitely will keep going like that.
True.
So yeah, and if you at some point decide to learn more about the previous steps of PandaDoc journey, we had it covered at 3 previous LESS conferences. So all videos are available at the LESS YouTube channel. You can always check them out and see what were the things we were telling 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and so on and so forth. It's very interesting to revisit that from time to time, even
Oh,
for
yeah.
people within the company.